It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Today on the Happy Families Podcast, we take a look at two questions. One from Neda, who wants to know about a 3.5-year-old who is beating up his little brother, and Emma in Brisbane trying to pick the right battles. Where do we stand our ground? Where do we give the kids a little bit of space? How are we supposed to figure it out? Hello, my name is Dr. Justin Coulson. Welcome to the Happy Families Podcast. Every Tuesday on the podcast, I answer your questions. If you'd like to leave us a message, all you have to do is go to happyfamilies.com.au. The super simple system, just scroll down to the podcast area, press record, start talking. It's that simple. Questions about parenting, questions about well-being, questions about relationships. Tuesday's the day that we do it. happyfamilies.com.au and use the super simple system to let me know your questions. Here we go with our first question. Number one from Neda.
Hi, Justin and Kylie. We have a 3.5-year-old son who's always had really intense emotions since he was born. He's super loving, but he also loves rough play. And that sometimes leads to him accidentally hurting his little brother. And that causes a lot of stress at home. We try to keep them apart if we can, but that's not realistic because they're in the same space. We talk to him about being gentle a lot, but he just loves playing rough, so he continues. How can we help him manage this? Are there any strategies that you recommend? Thanks a lot.
Okay, Neda, let's talk about siblings hurting siblings, especially when they're little. Okay, so we've got limited cognitive development. It's not like we can sit down and have a deep and meaningful conversation and get into perspective taking and things, at least not in any kind of profoundly deep and helpful way. Regulation is what we're talking about here. Helping our child to be gentle, which is really tricky because boys particularly love to use their bodies. Now, all kids love to be active, but boys seem to like to bump into each other and push up against each other and ram into each other and, I don't know, slap and kick and throw and punch and just that's kind of what we see with boys. We also see that they are less regulated physically, behaviorally. They're much more likely than girls to move with a lot of energy and a lot of ambition and purpose and excitement relative to girls. Now, of course, we're talking averages. There are some really sedate boys and there are some extremely active and physical girls. But on average, we see boys using their bodies a lot more. And this lack of regulation often comes across as problematic. We start to think there's something the matter with our boys. And then we feel like we need to fix them. So the first thing I want to emphasize is that your son doesn't need fixing. He is probably doing exactly what he's been designed genetically to do, but it is inconvenient. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's not challenging. Here are a handful of ideas that I think can help, and I'm just going to run through them fairly quickly, see which ones gel for you and which ones don't. Some will certainly resonate a lot more. The first thing that I really want to emphasize is just the importance of time. To a child, love is spelled T-I-M-E. We've got a little guy, he's got a new sibling, and while we might think that by now he's used to it, that doesn't mean that he definitely is. And every now and again, he probably just really, really loves to have good quality time with you. I think the second thing to highlight here is that sometimes he's just going to struggle to regulate. Out of excitement, not necessarily out of malice, he may become over-involved in ways that you would prefer he not be involved with his new sibling, and that of course can cause some challenges and problems. So I'd be encouraging you to read and cook and clean and be involved and spend time and also play and wrestle and jump and run and throw and do all those sorts of things. Keep him outside as much as you can. Keep him active as much as you can. I'd also be encouraging fun play, which usually means a little bit of risk. So we're talking about maybe doing things that involve going fast, maybe riding a bike or a scooter, or monster play like scare and jump moments, sort of rah kind of things. 3-year-olds love this sort of stuff. Anything that involves a level of risk, a level of activity, being outside, these kinds of things are going to help your son, your 3.5-year-old, to understand how to find the edges, how to bump into where the edges are and start to regulate more effectively. Every parent I talk to will absolutely confirm that when their kids are outside, they're simply better behaved, and they come home or they come inside and they're better regulated because they've got all their wiggles and their jiggles out while they were outside. A couple of other things that might be useful. If your son hurts his sibling, go straight to the hurt sibling and focus there. Let your son know that you know he's sorry. but focus on the hurt sibling. Build the sibling bond wherever you can. It sounds like that's mostly okay based on your voicemail, but every now and again, some parents will say, this is really not working. The kids don't seem to like each other. The big brother or the big sister's being a bully. I don't think that's an issue here, but we really want to build that sibling bond where you can. So have your big boy helping out, whether it's running some chores or doing some babysitting or just anything that can build that relationship. And the last thing that I would say is regular gentle reminders. The gentle reminder is that you call out to your son and you say, we're gentle, or we're soft, or we're kind, or whatever it is. Just a couple of words, just that gentle reminder consistently, like Chinese water torture, drip, 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 drip. Eventually the message will get in. I mean, again, we're talking about a 3.5-year-old, so regulatory capacity, cognitive capacity, both fairly limited, fairly restricted in the scheme of things. You're probably not going to completely stop it because siblings will constantly hurt each other from day dot all the way through. I mean, this is part of having, if you don't want the siblings to hurt each other, don't have siblings is kind of the pessimistic message that I would share, but he will mostly grow out of it kind of, and these tips and ideas should be helpful in helping you to get there. I think there's about 6 or 7 there, so that's quite a lot to hang on to. You might want to even go back and listen to it again because I ran through a number of things fairly quickly. Ultimately, though, Neda, such a fabulous age, so perfect, so delightful, such a privilege. It's just one of the best times that you'll ever have in your life, as exhausting and terrifying as it can sometimes be. 3.5-year-old boy, good luck. What a wonderful question. Up next, Emma in Brisbane struggling to pick the right battles. Question number 2 comes from Emma in Brisbane.
Hi, Justin and Kylie. My name is Emma and I'm calling from Brisbane with a query around picking your battles. I find this is such a great thing to do, to stop turning into a giant nag and becoming white noise. However, sometimes picking battles means that I don't feel like I can enforce some clear and consistent boundaries as well. As an example, I feel like I'm constantly nagging my 10-year-old to use his cutlery at the table and to not have his hands all over his 8-year-old brother. If I pick my battles and don't try to correct that behaviour, I don't feel like I'm enforcing the boundary that we would like to set in place. Any tips would be gratefully appreciated.
Oh, Emma, this is the relentless, never-ending challenge of parenting. When do you step in? When do you step out? The parents who do parenting the very best seem to have figured that one out. And I don't know that there's a simple formula that I can give you here, other than that some stuff is low level at one age and high level at another. So, for example, cutlery at 4 or 5 years of age is different to cutlery at 15 years of age. Manners at 3 is different to manners at 6 or 12. So where do we go with this? What battles do we take on, or do we just constantly nag about everything? I want to start with something that I emphasize a lot on this podcast, and that's the value in family meetings. When we have family meetings in our family, we sit down on a Sunday, we usually have a snack, although not always, and we basically say, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to talk about 3 things. Number 1, what do we do well in our family? Let's talk about the successes. Number 2, where are we falling short? Like, where have we not done so well this week? And number 3, if we would look at all of the things on both lists, which would we like to do more of this week, or shift and change and try to improve this week? And the reason that third question matters so much is because it gets everybody on the same page. It might be that you say, we're doing a few things wrong, but we've done a lot of things really, really well this week, and I think we should keep on doing those things really, really well. The alternative, of course, is that you can look at the list where things aren't going so well and say, we've got 4 or 5 things that we could definitely improve on. If we picked one and worked on it this week, which one would we work on? And this is not a finger-pointing exercise. It's not an opportunity to say, well, we've got this child who keeps on doing this and you need to work. It's, as a family, these are the things that we want to work on. And I guess what I'm really emphasizing here is that when we get on the same page, when we're all swimming in the same direction, we get much better results. And it might be that you don't get to discuss the manners issue or the cutlery issue or the sibling fighting issue for, 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. But as you start to make gentle progress, bit by bit. As you see yourself moving in the direction that your family functions better, all of a sudden everyone gets more motivated. Everyone likes the meeting because in 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, we've discussed where we're up to and what we're going to focus on. We've got direction and we can move in a healthy, positive way. So family meetings would be my number one response for this. The other thing that you could do is you could just gently set aside some time to be with your child and say, hey, kiddo, I've noticed something and I'd love to share it with you. Do you mind? I'm really big on asking kids for consent when we're going to share some correction or direction. And the reason for that is because when we just barge in and start telling them what they're doing wrong, they tend to feel incompetent. They start to feel like we're on their case all the time. We're nagging. There's lots of correction and direction. Whereas when we softly approach them and say, I've noticed something and I wanted to run it by you, they tend to be much more receptive. That consent around permission to share something that could improve their lives makes a difference. It can be really rough when they say, actually, I'd really rather that you didn't. I had one of my kids say that to me recently, and I was like, but I really need to tell you this because it's driving me mad. But it's a me thing, not a them thing. And I guess this goes back to that developmental idea that I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. Your child might be struggling with something right now, but do they need to have it completely under control now? Often we find that they'll figure it out as they get a bit older. There's one more thing that I want to share with you, Emma, that I think might be useful, and this goes for everybody, and that is that if you decide that a battle is worth picking, and I think that as a parent, you've got the right to pick the battles that you think need to be picked, provide a really clear rationale. Simon Sinek says you've got to start with why, and the reason is because it's so much more empowering. It's so much more need supportive. When your child understands why you would like them to use a knife and fork rather than their hands, they're more likely to say, oh, okay. In fact, what's even better than you starting with why and you providing the clear rationale is you saying, I've noticed that this is happening a lot lately. Can you think of any reasons why it might be bothering me? Or can you think of any reasons why it might be worth trying to improve what we're doing here? And stepping in with their opportunity to provide the rationale means that they're even more likely to internalize it because they're the ones that are figuring it out. Emma, there are many, many more things that we could do, many more conversations we could have around picking your battles. I mean, there are some people who say you're the parent and things should be the way you want them to be in the house. Just man up or parent up or whatever it is that you want to say. I don't think that approach is going to be useful. The ideas that I've shared here should get you moving in the right direction. Some gentle reminders, like I mentioned in the previous answer, some family meetings, and providing a really clear rationale and just remembering the developmental realities of what's going on. Thank you so much for your question, Emma. If you would like to submit a question, all you need to do is go to happyfamilies.com.au. We have a super simple system for you to use. You literally just scroll down to the podcast part of our homepage, press the record button and start talking. We only have a few more weeks to go, just over a month until we break for Christmas. So if you'd like to get those questions in, especially questions with a Christmassy sort of theme, jump onto happyfamilies.com.au. Let me know what's going on in your home, your relationships, your well-being, your parenting, and I'll do my best to be as helpful as I can. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information about making your family happier, love for you to join us at happyfamilies.com.au.